Hi, I'm Bob Woolverton, your Northwest Realty Advisor, and how are you on this fine day? Me? I'm all geared up to share information with you on how to make your offer more attractive in the seller's eyes. Now, you would think in a competitive market like we have in the Seattle area when there's multiple offers, that it would be simple for the seller. They would just select the offer that had the highest price. But I can tell you that's not always the case. I have seen time and time again where the seller has selected the offer that had maybe the second or even the third highest price because there were other factors in the offer that were more appealing to the seller. So that's the topic of our episode today, is how to make your offer more attractive in the eyes of the seller. So you would think that when you make an offer to purchase a home, that the biggest driving factor for the seller would be getting the most amount of money they can for their home. And no doubt, that is a major consideration, but there are also other considerations that may be motivating the seller. For example, if I were to say that I were offering you all cash, 10-day closing, would that be an attractive offer to you? Well, of course it would be, because it's all cash, there's no financing contingency. It's going to close in 10 days so I can get on with the rest of my life, and I know that you're not going to get out of the contract. All cash, 10 days, we're done. Done deal. That's a very attractive offer. That's a very rare offer. Now, even though you offer a high price or an all cash offer, there are other factors to be considered. And that's where I look at these contingencies in a purchase and sale contract. Now, a purchase and sale contract is heavily weighted in favor of the buyer to give them the opportunity to make sure that what they're buying is what they're expecting, and that if anything falls short along the way, they have legal options to get out of the contract. Because once you have a signed around purchase and sale contract, you are in a legally binding contract. It puts conditions on both the buyer and the seller that they have to meet prior to closing, and if either party fails to meet one of those criteria, there's legal consequences. For the buyer, it's usually you forfeit your earnest money. Now, the purchase and sale contract is built in with different contingencies, and you can choose to either exercise those or waive those. And of course, what I've got here on this list, I show them as termination contingencies, is because as the buyer, you can terminate the contract and get your earnest money back. But what that means for the seller is then they have to start the process all over again. So when they get into a contract with you, they want to get to closing just as much as you do. So the fewer of these termination contingencies that are in your offer, the more attractive they're going to be to the seller. So let's take a look. Right here I've got 5, and there's actually more than just these 5, but these are the 5 big ones, and I'm going to blow through them really fast. I'm going to try to spend 2 minutes or less on each one because, after all, this is YouTube and we want to keep these videos short. But the first one we're going to start with is the inspection contingency. Okay, so normally when you buy a property, what you want to do is you want to have a structural inspection. And there's a form for this, and that is the Form 35. So let me toggle over here to the Form 35. And that would be this one here. Now, what this inspection contingency does for you is it says right here in line 1A that this agreement is conditioned on the buyer's subjective satisfaction. So in essence, when you do an inspection, you really don't have to have even a good reason to get out because it's subjective based on your opinion. So at any time up to the 10 days in this contingency, you could get out of the contract and get your earnest money back. Now, what a lot of buyers do to be more attractive in the seller eyes, they'll do a pre-inspection. So before they make an offer, they get permission to do an inspection, and then they get the inspection report and they go, okay, I'm good with this. They make their offer, and then they've waived inspection because they've already done it. Say, I've already met this criteria. We can take this off the table as a contingency or a way for me to get out of the contract. Now, if you do that, if you do a pre-inspection and then you're not the successful bidder, and then you go on to the next house down the road and you do that again, it's going to get very expensive because an inspection is going to cost you about $450 or $500 depending on the size of the house. So you can see that if you're not the successful bidder, you do this 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 times, it can get very expensive. Now, I rarely would I ever recommend that you not do an inspection on a home. There are some rare conditions, and that would be a discussion for us to have depending on your circumstance and the condition of the home. But generally what you would do is take this 10-day period and shorten it down to 5 days. And even if you made an offer with a 10-day contingency, if they liked your offer, they might counter back and say, let's shorten the inspection contingency to 5 days. Very doable. You can get an inspector out, get your report within 5 days. So that would make it more attractive because then you've narrowed it down that within 5 days, I'll know for sure whether I want to move forward with this house or not, which lessens the time for the seller. So that's a good start right there. Now, the next option would be the financing. Now, this one's a very tricky one. Like I said, the all-cash offer, in essence, you're waiving financing. Not many people can do that. So in the Form 22A, which gets included with your offer, basically right here, line 1A, it says this agreement is contingent on the buyer obtaining the following type of loan or loans to buy the property, whether it's a conventional first, second, VA loan, or whatever it is. So that's contingent that, well, yeah, I will go through if I can get the loan, but if I can't get the loan, then I can get out of the terminate the contract and get my earnest money back. So again, there's another loophole for the buyer that works against the seller. The seller wants to move forward with their life. If you're able to waive this, that can make it stronger for you, but not very many people can afford to do that. Now, here's the other condition, is that you come forward with a pre-approval, but now there's another issue. Let's say you bid $500,000 on a house, and you're the successful bidder. Well, now your bank, who's going to give you the loan, is going to have an appraiser come out, and if the appraiser says it's only worth $450,000, the option is either you can get out of the contract, or the seller can reduce their price to $450,000, or you can make up the difference in cash. So this is an option where you can waive a low appraisal if you have the cash to do that. So in this example, you'd be saying to the seller, well, if the appraisal comes in at $450,000, my bank's only going to loan $450,000 based on that. I have to do the down payment and so on. I'll make up the difference in cash so you still get the $500,000 sales price. If you can do that. Again, if you can do that, that makes it more attractive to the seller. So these are the two hardest ones to do. That would be the inspection waiver or the inspection contingency and the financing contingency. Now, the other contingencies, very simple and easy to do. CC&Rs, the Covenants, Conditions, and Restrictions review under the Form 22. So let's go over to the Form 22. And Section 8. This is basically a homeowners association review. And what that means, in a single family neighborhood, in a single family residential neighborhood, a lot of times there's an HOA, but it has very few responsibilities. Maybe the dues is $10 or $15 a month, and it basically pays for the landscaping maintenance to the entrance to the community or something like that. You can get all of these, the rules and regulations and all that information ahead of time, and it's pretty easy to make a review on that. The caveat with this is if you're making an offer on a condominium, you don't want to waive this review because there's a maintenance reserve, and you want to make sure the maintenance reserve is adequately funded. That's a completely different topic. But when we're talking about single-family homes in a homogeneous neighborhood, this sort of information you can generally find out pretty quick and get all the answers you need before you even make your offer, so you could waive this contingency and take it off the table. The next one would be the seller disclosure. Now, when you go to buy a home, a seller is going to provide you with a Form 17. The Form 17 basically gives you a lot of information about the home. In essence, does the seller even have legal title to be able to sell the house? What's the water supply? Is it a well? Is it a municipal water system? What's the septic system? Is it on sewer, or is it a septic tank? Has the roof leaked in the last 5 years? Has the basement ever flooded? And all these kinds of criteria. Well, depending on the type of the house, how new the house is, the neighborhood, and so on, you can look over this seller disclosure and decide up front if you can waive that, if you're satisfied with all the information in there. Because otherwise, in the Form 21, let me get over here to the Form 21. This is the Section X information verification period. You've got, again, 10 days to verify all this information to your satisfaction. Well, this is the sort of thing that you can do up front, get this information. It's a little situational, so you want to talk with your agent about this to decide if this is a viable option for you. But it is a very viable option that you can waive off of your contract. The next one, again, super easy, neighborhood review. This is the Form 35, Section 2. So let's go over to Form 35 in Section 2. Right here, the neighborhood review contingency. Now this one, it gives you 3 days to basically decide where the schools are, where the best bus routes are, and if this neighborhood fits where you want to live. Again, this is the sort of thing that you can do during an open house before you ever make an offer. You can find out up in the neighborhood. You can go knock on the neighbors' doors and ask them, are there any problems homes in this neighborhood? What's this neighborhood like to live in? Are there children here? Are there not children here? You know, whatever you're looking for in a neighborhood that's suitable to you, you can find out this sort of information prior to submitting your offer, and that way this contingency, you can take this one off the table too. So when we look at all of these different termination contingencies here, the more of these that you can take off the table, in essence, waive up front by doing your due diligence before you make your offer, it'll make it that much more attractive to the seller. So if somebody comes in with the exact same price offer that you have, say $500,000, but they want all of these contingencies in their contract, and say you only want 2 of these contingencies, your offer is going to be more attractive in the eyes of the seller. So that is a very brief recap of making your offer more attractive in the eyes of the seller. There's other things as far as date to closing, whether you can close in 10 days, 30 days, or 45 days, how much earnest money you put down, and those are all going to be talked about in future videos. If you found value in the information that I provided to you today, please click that subscribe button. That's all that I ask. If you have any questions, shoot me an email in the comment section down below. I'd love to answer your questions. And even better, this is a YouTube video. It's quick, it's brief. These topics deserve detailed discussion. So if you'd like to have detailed discussion, I'll meet you for coffee somewhere. I'm in the greater Seattle area. I'm Bob Woolverton, your Northwest Realty Advisor. We've got new videos every week. Thank you for your time.